Hello, everyone. I'm John Ray, and welcome back to the Price and Value Journey. Now, if you're a services provider thinking about scaling your business in the most efficient way possible, you're going to be interested in this episode. You might also be a services provider who's dipped your toe in the water by hiring a virtual assistant, maybe one that's across the globe somewhere, and you're wondering about whether you could scale further, assembling a fully remote team. If either of those descriptions fit you or anything along that continuum, you're going to be interested in hearing from my guest today, Adam Houlahan. Now, if you're a past listener of this series, you've heard Adam before, and that Adam was on this series to talk about LinkedIn newsletters because he is a LinkedIn expert. And he's the CEO of a very highly successful LinkedIn agency called Prominence Global. He hosts arguably the world's largest free online LinkedIn training event with thousands of people registering every 10 weeks. And he's my show notes say he's one of Australia's leading experts. He's actually one of the globe's leading experts in harnessing the power of LinkedIn for business. I follow him closely. And Adam is terrific, and he's the author of 3 best-selling Amazon books on social media and specifically LinkedIn, and I've read all 3 of them, and they are terrific. Now, Adam has recently released a brand new book called The Distributed Team's Blueprint, Leveraging Remote Team Members to Scale Your Business. A little bit different direction seemingly, but what he's done is share his knowledge and experience in the journey of building Prominence Global by assembling a remote global team. Adam Houlahan, welcome back.
John, it is an absolute pleasure, and I can't believe we're in 2025.
It's amazing, and this is a great way to get the year going in a lot of ways because a lot of folks have big plans for 2025 and beyond, and scaling is on the minds of a lot of our listeners, certainly, and a lot of folks who are in the services profession. So let's get to it. Why this book? Why did you go in this direction? Why did you feel the desire to share your experience and knowledge in building remote teams through this book?
It's a good question, isn't it, John? Because so well known as you outlined for really what we do on LinkedIn. And really the book, the inspiration of the book really came from some of our existing clients who have been with us for quite some time, a number of years, and they witnessed the transformation of Prominence Global into a globally distributed team. And a number of them said, is there any chance you could help us find some people for a number of reasons? And which, because they were clients, of course, we wanted to help them out, and so we did. And then my business partner said, you really should be making this into an actual product because it has so much value for so many businesses. And hence the program, which we call Remote Team Connect, was born. And then out of that, again, people said, maybe is there any chance you could write the book that kind of explains it all? And here we are 6 months later, and that's what the book writing journey is like. And it's just been released.
Yeah, congratulations. It's a great book, folks. I've read the book, and it's terrific. I urge you to pick it up and read it. And I think after you listen to this interview, you'll want to do that, I'm sure. Adam, you opened the book by discussing how in 22 years, 18 months ago, you realized that you no longer needed a physical office. So talk about what was going on in your firm and the factors that led to you realizing that point.
Yeah, so John, it was an interesting time because Prominence has been around for over 10 years now. And when we started, we actually were a distributed team, and we didn't have any offices. We did have team members locally here in Australia where we're based, but they work from home and in different states and things like that. And then as you grow and get bigger and things, people said, oh, you probably should have your core team in an office because you can collaborate better and all of that stuff. And so we did that. We went out and we bought these offices and we renovated them, and we had so it was a beautiful place right on this lovely lake near where we live, and it's a nice place for team members to come. And but what we found though was we had the problem that everyone else had, which was that there's massive competition for good, talented people in Australia, just like there is in the US and in the UK. And so it was very difficult to find people when you went from having the world as your oyster as far as choice down to just one city in one country. And so over a 2-year period, which was late 2020 into early 2023, that we just thought this kind of doesn't work the way that it's supposed to. And we were much better off how we originally had the team distributed around the world. And of course, people don't stay forever, and one by one, team members moved on for whatever reason. And then I came to the realization that we really don't need an office space, and we don't need the team members to be face to face, and nobody stays forever. And we were just really struggling to find the right people to fill the right roles. So I decided to sell the offices, move back to just working from home myself. And the team is now back to how we started 10 years ago, where we select the best people wherever they are in the world, and it works much better.
Yeah, and to your point, what's implicit in what you're saying is that distributed teams are not just a product of the pandemic, right? You started your company well before the pandemic as a distributed team. You've now come back around full circle, I guess you might say, to today, where you're back to being a fully distributed and remote global team. So to dispel the notion that this is somehow a reaction to the pandemic, it sounds like it's a reaction more to demographics or labor trends than anything.
I agree. I think the pandemic kind of accelerated the acceptance, and it highlighted a problem that obviously prior to the pandemic, businesses could be quite, let's just say, forceful in saying, you have to come and work from our offices, and we have to be able to see what you're doing and keep control of workflows and things like that. And the pandemic showed that because there became no choice, that it could be done a different way, and it could be done a better way, and it could be a win where the team members were much more comfortable. And sometimes they might have worked a few days at home, a few days in the office. There's so many different variations of it now. But yeah, I think, like you said, it's really, whilst that may have been the catalyst of it, the other challenge is the labour markets are just in the major Western countries. It's just very difficult now because team members, are a little more selective in the roles they want to take. The world is now their oyster. There's plenty of people in the US working for international companies, or here in Australia working for international companies. So the availability of local talent in those regions is tougher, and also the remuneration that we're having to pay to attract those people is a lot higher than what it used to be.
Let's get into some of the nuts and bolts of building a remote team. Talk about what you're looking for in terms of traits, characteristics of individuals that will be great remote team members.
Yeah, it's a good distinction, John, because obviously there's the underlying skill set that people need, as far as they have to be able to form a role, as in if you need a graphic designer, clearly they have to have a skill in graphic design. However, there's also other factors now that have to be taken into consideration, and some people just struggle to fit into the role of remote work, as far as they have to be very comfortable with that working from home. They have to be very comfortable with that time zones can be a little bit different. It's no longer a 9 to 5 type of role. It's still like an 8-hour day, but what those hours may be could vary by many factors. In some cases, like for us, one of the reasons we always had a distributed team in the first place was, as you're aware, we've got a lot of clients. We're based in Australia, but we've got a lot of clients in, say, the US or North America and in Europe. And so the time zones to Australia are really diverse. So we had to have people on the ground, so to speak, in North America. We had to have people in Europe so that they could collaborate with our clients in sensible times. But the dynamic or the skill set of the people you're looking for has to go beyond just the skill of, i.e. graphic designer. They have to be au fait and comfortable with the concept of remote work and self-discipline as far as getting stuff done on time, and not really having that manager or boss sitting over their shoulder making sure they're getting their work done. They have to be self-starters. They just have to get things done. And of course, they then also, instead of just getting a paycheck at the end of the week or month, they've got to be invoicing and stuff like that. It's a slight variation, but the underlying skill still has to be they're a graphic designer, they're a salesperson, they're a social media expert, they're an executive assistant, whatever it might be.
Now, this question may be a good place for you to introduce what you're doing in this area to help business owners that want to build a remote global team. But it seems to me a lot of businesses have basically outsourced choice to basically virtual assistant agencies or whatever you want to call them. So that choice that I referenced earlier about traits and characteristics that you might be looking for, other than the basic skills, that agency seems to take care of, basically. And so you basically hire who they put in front of you. Talk about how your approach in terms of how you help businesses is similar, different to that, and I guess the gap that you saw out there that you feel that's important.
Yeah, it's a good question. So one of the things, and by the way, John, I'm not by any means against those agency models. However, what we found when we was looking for our team members ourselves, remember this is where this all came from, was that usually there was real limitations as example, the agencies might have a real focus on that all of their team and focus is based in the Philippines, as an example, or they might be focused on India or wherever it might be. And often was the case for us was, well, it's great that you got a role in people in the Philippines. However, still doesn't really work for our clients in Europe. So one thing is what we do is we first of all match the candidates by country. So where do you need this support? What are the important things to your business? Do you need face-to-face time with them? Is it okay if they work opposite hours? As in your day might be finishing as their day starting. Does that work? Things like that. The other thing, of course, is generally speaking in the agency model is that there's an ongoing management cost to manage those people. And what we found is, generally speaking, these people are quite capable of managing themselves, and therefore you have this higher ongoing cost. There was a certain amount of the monthly fee that you were paying as a business that would go to the person actually doing the role, but then quite a substantial amount of that monthly fee was going to the agency to manage those people. So how our model is different is that there's no agency fees, or there's a one-off fee to find and vet and shortlist the candidates. But after that, you're basically contracting directly with them. 100% of the fee is going to the person doing the work. Therefore, you can attract good talent because you're paying probably less than what you're paying to the agency, but much more of it's going to the actual person doing the work. So again, it's a real win-win.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about I think the one thing that drives a lot of people to distributed teams are cost savings. And one of the things that you point out in the book is that you use the example of $100,000 in-house employee could be replaced by distributed team members. So one or more at 40 to 75% lower cost. That's a big number. But at the same time, you say that business owners should not think about this as simply about cost savings. So I guess it's easy to fall in love with that cost savings bit, but let's talk about, I guess, the value that comes beyond the financial.
Yeah, so there's actually really two factors that drive it, John. So there's certainly times, and as I was sharing with you earlier, a lot of times now I'm going to keep referencing North America, Australia, the UK, because these are the core markets we work in, that there's a talent shortage. So one, it's often not even the fact that it's the cost saving, it's the fact they can't find anyone locally. And I'll give you an example. So as a client of ours based here in Australia, in Brisbane, and for 3 months they'd been using a recruitment agency trying to fill a role, just couldn't. I think in 3 months they'd had interviewed 5 people, none of which were ideal. So then they came to us and said, look, we're not having any luck with this. Yeah, how can we do it differently? And so we went through it. We said, look, this role should be placed with someone in South Africa. Here's why, whatever. And yet, as you said, this particular role, their budget was $100,000. And we ended up placing the role for $24,000, which in South Africa was a fantastic remuneration for that particular role. The exchange rate difference is 11-1, South Africa to Australia. So therein lies why that works. So that was the key. The two, they couldn't yet. Yes, I think when we ran that, we had something like 84 qualified candidates that we then vetted further, and they had 20 people to choose from within 10 days. So therein lies the thing that often drives the motivation for this. Also, there is the financial side that sometimes, while I can find candidates locally, the cost has gone so high that I actually can't afford it. And there's so many businesses that the founder is just doing extra work because they can't afford to hire team members to do the work, or their other team members are so overworked because they say, look, we just can't afford anyone. I need you to just pitch in and do extra work. Therefore, it becomes, okay, if I can now get somebody in another country that's substantially less than what it would cost me locally, I can now afford it. So they're roles that wouldn't have been placed in the first place from an affordability perspective that now can be placed, and that takes all the burden off the owner of the business, or it's taking the burden off the other team members that are having to do extra roles or things like that.
You've mentioned the need often to have multiple or team members in multiple time zones, from Asia to Eastern Europe and so forth. What are your learnings from managing team members in those different time zones?
Yeah, it becomes can become one of the biggest challenges if it's not managed well. And we talk about synchronous and asynchronous types of communication. So there's times where you need to have some overlap so that those team members can jump on team meetings and things like that. And you can have when I say face-to-face, by Zoom or Teams or whatever it is. But also things like Slack and those type of communication channels where it's instant chat and things like that. And of course, an understanding that there's certain times of the day where the business is expecting you to be immediately available. And then there's other times of the day where a question or something may get put onto the communication channel, but everyone's aware they're not going to see an answer for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, whatever that may be. So you have to really have these synchronous and asynchronous systems that work together, and making sure that the real key to this, John, is making sure that the new team member that you're bringing in is very aware before you get started of all of these things. Otherwise, I have seen it fail just simply because not enough preparation was done, and there wasn't enough understanding from both sides as to what was acceptable and what wasn't. So yeah, it takes a little bit of preparation, and I talk all about how to do that preparation in the book. So you simply just follow the dots and the outline, and you'll have the process there.
Now, one of the things you mentioned, to your point, you talk about the buddy system approach for onboarding new remote team members, and talk about why that works, your experience with that, why it's so effective.
Yeah. So again, often it'll be the case that these new team members, they have all the attributes that's needed. However, they may not have actually performed a role in this way. And I'll give you an example. So we're hiring a new role right now, and we're in the final stages of interviews. And this particular role, it's going to be the person that we'd be taking on will be based in South Africa. And so we will be buddying this person with one of our team members in Serbia, because time zones, they're reasonably on board. They can communicate very easily throughout the day. And also for training purposes, this person in Serbia is doing the same role, therefore knows exactly what's involved. And instead of this new person only be getting a less amount of daily interaction with our team here in Australia, they're able to interact together, jump on calls every day, just to have a quick check-in every morning, how's things going, almost a coffee or a water cooler chat, as we call it. And does two things. It allows that team member to really get onboarded into the process a lot more effectively, and also gets them a sense of that team feel. Even though they're not meeting face to face, they feel like they know somebody within the business, and they have a friend that's there to make sure that you always have kind of what might seem like a silly question, but it's only silly because you haven't done it before. When you have a buddy who's been in the role, done it before, then you're more comfortable to go and just quickly ask that question and get it fixed quickly.
So it's one thing to talk about different time zones. That's almost mechanical, maybe, in a way, is the word for that. It's an entirely different matter to talk about different cultural context, right? So you could have two individuals that are in the same time zone but have wildly different cultural ideas about the workplace and how they fit into that workplace, and then therefore how you manage those individuals. So talk about cultural differences, talk about your successes, and maybe a cultural misunderstanding or two that you've encountered along the way, and how you resolve that.
Yeah, it's an important point. So let's use Christmas as a perfect example. Within our team, we have team members who, through their beliefs and religions, don't even celebrate Christmas. And then we have others that do celebrate Christmas, but they celebrate it at a slightly different time. And things like, it's not the 25th of December as an example. It's actually in January. So you've got to have an awareness of these things. You've got to be aware of what are the local and likely differences between something as simple as Christmas, or what should seem as simple as Christmas. That's one example. The other is that in some countries, and two good examples of this would be the Philippines and India, they have way more public holidays than what we're used to in Western countries. Again, if you don't have an understanding right from the get-go of that, and there's just an assumption made by that team member that, hey, they're not required to work on all of these public holidays, then there's can be a real challenge with workflow. Now, often is the case that, these holidays, some of them are important to team members and some of them are not. So one of the ways that we mitigated that is that, so we're obviously aware of what all these holidays are, and we say, look, under our way of working, we allow for 6 public holidays a year, and you can choose 6. We know you probably have about 15, however, that's not viable, but you can choose 6 that we know in advance, and we'll plan for it and we'll work around it. So there's some examples. The other ones can be as simple as humor. So what one culture finds funny, another culture doesn't. So yeah, you can't sometimes, especially for Australian companies, Australian people, should say, very tend to be very like a good joke and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my American friends are very much the same, but in other regions, one they don't understand the humor, or it can almost be offensive. So you just got to be a little bit mindful of the way that you might interact when you had an entire team all in one location in one country where everyone's most likely on the same page, so to speak, where now you can have this potential that things are a little bit different. And really, John, nobody really goes, even us, goes from overnight from a whole team in one location to this diverse team all over the world. It usually is just what, they take on one team member, find that really goes well, and they add another and another slowly over a period of time. So it's not difficult to say, okay, we're going to be hiring this role in, let's just say, Eastern Europe as an example. And especially with things like ChatGPT and Google these days, it's very easy to go, well, what's the find out a bit of the cultural sort of norms and just be aware of them before you get started.
Let's talk about cybersecurity. Now, that's one area that I think a lot of major corporations, they've used cybersecurity as an excuse to get everyone in the office, right? We've got to get everyone into the castle and pull up the digital drawbridge, as it were. Why? What are your views on that, and making sure that your business is cyber secure when you've got a global team?
Yeah, and so it's a really good point, and it's why I labored fairly heavily a chapter on that in the book, because yes, you're right. One of the things that we were able to do when we had an office space and people locally was control that. We usually had the company owned the desktops or the laptops or whatever was all used, or could at least control what was accessed and things like that. And now when you start to go to distributed teams, you've got two things. One, you don't know, does that person have some sort of a malware already on their machine? As part of your onboarding, how to check for those sort of things? You don't know where they may be working from home one day, but then they're on a cafe the next on an open network and things like that. Cybersecurity is certainly a challenge. And it's a question that does get asked. So often, I wouldn't say often, but sometimes when clients join us, or at least when they're in that stage of deciding whether to join us, they know that we have this distributed team. They say, how are you going to maintain security? My LinkedIn account or this or that, and my CRM when you're accessing it. That if we don't know who in your team or where they are accessing it, what guarantees can you give me that there's not going to be any challenges and things like that? So cybersecurity is definitely something that has to be taken seriously, though in all fairness, it has to be taken seriously even if you're in a localized situation now. Having said that, though, John, there's lots of times now where I've got a team all in one location, but then people are working from home, or they may be unwell, and you might have a policy that says, look, if you've got a cold, but you're still able to work from home, just don't bring it into the office. You've already opened up the exact same challenge that you would have had if you had a team member in another country anyway. So it really is just business 101 to be vigilant on this type of thing now.
Yeah, for sure. Now, another, I guess, criticism you might say that major companies that are calling everyone back 100% back to the office, quote unquote, is just support systems and making sure that while you're giving people autonomy, you're maintaining the structure that you need in your business. So talk about how you address that.
It's, as you said, it doesn't really matter whether it's a major corporation or a small enterprise, 5 people, 10 people, whatever it might be. Then you're still really in larger corporations, bigger budgets to do things. Then generally speaking, you can almost have a dedicated person that's there to manage and control those type of issues. In the smaller businesses not so much. So of course, there has to be systems in place and checks and balances. Everything that we do, we always have a second person that may check something. As an example, when we might be doing email marketing, and one of our team members will be the copywriter. There's another team member that's kind of loading all of that into our CRM. But then there'll be a third person that comes and checks all of that before it all goes live. And all three of these people are actually in different countries. So what's more important than where the people are is what are the checks and balances, what are the processes you have in place to maintain that systemized approach and due diligence on making sure that you're delivering a world-class service to your clients, and also a world-class online presence for the business, because the personal branding, company branding is such a big part of business these days. It can be easily damaged by team members just getting that wrong.
Now, another big one in terms of the criticisms that a lot of folks have of distributed companies that are made up of distributed teams is they're very cynical about how you build trust, how you maintain strong relationships, particularly when you have team members that may never meet, unlikely to ever meet in person.
It's very true. There's a number of team members on our team that I've never met. Now, I do travel internationally quite a bit. I do try and get around to meeting all of our team members, but quite often within the team itself, as an example, we have a number of team members in the Philippines, but they're all in very different parts of the Philippines. It's a big country. It's not something that people do to travel around like we might do easily in North America or here in Australia. So even within the same country, they don't really meet each other necessarily. Yeah, so what we always try to do is we always have 2 team meetings per week. So there's a start of the week and end of the week where we have a certain time of the day that all team members can pretty much, it might be early morning for some and late afternoon for others and things like that. However, we can all get together at the same time. So we have set times every week where that occurs. And so part of that will be, and it's just as a rough idea, the Monday one is very business-like. It's all, hey, what's going on this week? What challenges do you have? What support do you need? What's going on with this client type of stuff? And then the Friday one it's just a quick wrap up. Hey, how did everything go? Did we get everything done? Is there anything we need to prioritize for Monday? And then the rest of it's really more just the social kind of aspect, if that makes sense. So that's the key. Is you've got to maintain. That doesn't cover your question of trust, but what it covers is that ability for teams to come together and have a sense of community and things like that. And we also encourage team members to interact with each other on a somewhat social level. So they might jump on a Zoom call where 2 of them get together and they're just talking about their day and stuff like that. They're all the little things that make people feel part of a team. Mm-hmm. And of course, the things like Christmas, and we make sure that we send people, our team all over the world, gifts or whatever it might be. But the big question that you asked is trust. So realistically, that trust comes down to, some of it has to be just a gut feel, no different to when you might bring in a new team member into your organization locally. But also in some of that becomes down to just not taking chances, which we talked about, like in cybersecurity, things like that. So you've just got to have those checks and balances. We don't go as far as, there's software that can take snapshots of people's laptops or things that they're actually doing their work and stuff like that. I don't think that really builds trust. In fact, I think it's a big killer of trust. So what we work on, we're not really focused on the overall that someone was there from 9 to 5. we focus on, hey, at the start of the week, we agreed this was the work that was going to get completed by Friday. Did that get completed? And is it a yes or a no? And if it was a no, are there any mitigating reasons as to why? And what we find with our team is 9 times out of 10, they hit their KPIs and things like that. Anyway, it's very rare that on a Friday meeting that one of the team will come and say, hey, I didn't get everything done. Because I'll reach out during the week and say, I'm struggling on this, I need some help with this. And of course, we'll supply that help. But then the major thing is that quite often what will happen is they'll say, hey, I haven't got this finished, but I'm going to on Saturday, I'm just going to jump in for a couple of hours and I'll get it done. So by Monday, we're all good to go. A little bit of trust goes both ways as far as being flexible on what are the things that are important as far as trust. Is it hours worked or is it outcomes that get completed?
There's a lot of talk, Adam, about the companies and their ability to leverage AI as being a competitive advantage. And I just wonder if a little bit of that, maybe a lot of it, is overstated to this extent. That seems like to me to be almost an unlimited resource, whereas people are not. And as you've eloquently pointed out, the labor shortage in so many countries and the Australia, United States, what have you, that your ability to leverage people ultimately is your competitive advantage. And is going to determine your ability to scale and be successful. What do you think about that dichotomy?
Look, there's no argument that AI is here to stay, and that the level of complexity of the things that AI will be able to do in the future will probably be quite mind-boggling. And there's no doubt that it's going to disrupt some roles. A good example of that is copywriting. So AI has been around for years. It's only just become quite topical since the release of ChatGPT. However, copywriters will say, oh, AI will never replace me as a copywriter because it can't do this and can't do that. And at some levels, that's true. But I know in fact, we had a number of copywriters who were very, let's just say, entry level in the tasks they were doing that were completely replaced by AI at some point. So there will definitely be disruption. I saw a good friend of mine who is literally, I think if it didn't release it yesterday, it's today, a new AI technology that essentially will replace a receptionist answering the phone. 100%. There is no, and I think that the cost of that service to have a phone able to be answered practically like 24/7 is about $60 a month, as opposed to imagine what it would cost you to have a receptionist sitting at the front desk all day from Monday to Friday. And of course, the receptionist can only take one call at a time. The AI technology can handle as many incoming calls as required. And will it be 100% perfect day one? Probably not. Yeah, but it's probably 90%. But I guarantee you within a few months it will be. So yeah, agreed. There's definitely going to be a level of disruption through AI, and that will be ongoing. And the types of roles and things that it will affect will come up the value chain over a period of time. And so the reality is as businesses, we have to leverage every asset we can. So there's a level where distributed teams is a good thing. There'll also be a level where AI will be a good way to resolve some of those challenges we had. And really the people who are in those roles just need to be aware that maybe no job is forever anymore. Probably, John, remember when our parents were doing whatever they were doing, it wasn't uncommon for someone to stay and work in the same company their entire work life.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody now that does that. So the world has changed. For sure.
As we come down to the close of our time, I want to give you a chance to, you sideswiped it there a bit, but I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit more deeply about your company and how you help business owners expand through distributed teams And maybe the way to start is just talk about the types of businesses. What are the characteristics of those businesses that are great fits for you that need to be giving you a call?
Yeah, sure. So predominantly the businesses, like location-wise, that we mainly work with as North America, Asia Pacific, really Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, and the English-speaking countries in Europe. They're the main locations we operate from, and we have team members locally in those areas to manage that. The type of businesses they are will quite varied, but they're usually service-based businesses. And as far as the roles that are often replaced, it is incredible when you start to think it through on what some of these things that it's not just the traditional roles that you might think. We've had a number of clients that have come to us and said, a good example is they said, we've been using this graphic design service that's really clunky. Yeah, we've got to put in this brief every time we want to do something. It's a 24-hour turnaround by the time we get back something that we can look at. And if we've got changes, we've got to upload. It's just very slow and cumbersome. And we're paying $1,000 a month for that. Well, we can probably get you a part-time graphic designer in a different country for $350 a month. So it's not even just necessarily roles, it's often subscriptions to things that can be utilized in this way as well. And then how it's really different of how we go about it is now we don't define ourselves as a recruitment agency. We're a marketing agency. As far as we'll say, will you tell us what the role you need filled is, and then we will do the research and tell you what country options, what countries have lots of skill sets in these, what's the fair and reasonable remuneration that you should pay in that local country, here's like a pro forma in agreement that you can use when all the things you need to think about. We've done all the hard work for them there. And then, of course, we go out and find those people, and then we vet them. Often it's, as an example, one role that we recently were placing for an SEO company here in Australia. They got over 1,000 applications for the role. So you can imagine what it would be like to go and vet that. So then we have some AI technology, like you said. How does AI disrupt stuff?
Yep.
That then actually video interviews them and asks certain questions, and it can then test their English comprehension and skill set for certain things, and we can very quickly distill that down to a short list of high quality candidates. So that's essentially the service that we offer, and we offer it for a fixed fee. A lot of times with recruitment, it's a percentage of the remuneration, the annual remuneration of the person in that role. And often it's in the recruitment agency's favour to be suggesting higher salaries and things like that. So with us, it's just a fixed one-off fee, no ongoing management fees. So it's very affordable and very effective for companies.
Yeah, that sounds quite compelling. Just one more question there. Do you, let's say I'm interested in scaling my business and I'm really not necessarily looking to fill a role per se. I'm looking more for strategy on how I ought to grow remotely over the next, let's say 5 years, 10 years, what have you. Is that an approach you take with clients as well?
To a limited degree, John, that's not the core of what we've set ourselves up to do. It's more we've developed this way for companies that, and look, we have also developed things like assessments and things that companies can use to determine whether they are ready right now to be looking at this or not. And then obviously, if they're not, I can show them, what you need to probably work on this or this until you are ready. And so the niche within the market of even though we did do that for ourselves, and we have done that to a certain degree for existing clients, where we're really sitting in the marketplace is the role you want. You're struggling to find that role locally, or the cost is too high, and we can easily go out and within 14 days, you've got your candidates ready to go.
Adam, this has been fabulous. So much great information. And folks, I encourage you to pick up Adam's book, The Distributed Teams Blueprint, Leveraging Remote Team Members to Scale Your Business. It's on Amazon, and I'm sure where a lot of fine books are sold. Just check it out there. And Adam, before we let you go, let's get to the most important question, which is folks that want to be in touch directly, learn more about your service and your philosophies in this area. Where can they connect with you?
John, always the two simplest ways is either on our website, just prominence.global. You can go to the products section and you can see all the information about this there and the other things we do, or just connecting and engaging with me on LinkedIn.
And I'm shocked to know that you could do that with Adam on LinkedIn. Adam will always be on LinkedIn no matter what business he's in, for sure, because he believes in the power of LinkedIn. Adam Houlahan with Prominence Global. Adam, thank you again so much for your book, for your work, and for sharing it with us today.
An absolute pleasure and honor, John. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, folks, just a couple of quick things before we let you go. If you are a solo small firm services provider and you're having issues with your pricing, your value, your understanding of value, you're a little fuzzy on your positioning, I've written a book that's meant for you. It's called The Generosity Mindset, A Journey to Business Success by Raising Your Confidence, Value, and Prices. It's available on where really all books are sold, physical or digital. You can get it either way. Go to thegenerositymindset.com to learn more and find out exactly where to buy the book. Also, I want to thank you. If you're listening to this show, I just want to thank you because you support us in so many ways, and I'd love to hear from you. John@johnray.co. That's John@johnray.co is an email address you can use to directly with me and give us feedback. Would love to have your feedback on this show or any others in this series. And again, we appreciate your support of the Price and Value Journey. So for my guest, Adam Houlahan, I'm John Ray. Join us next time on the Price and Value Journey.